When you hear the word Nika, what comes to your mind? Some of you will answer that this is the sun god from One Piece. Apologies for the spoilers. Some of you will say victory in Greek, but what if I tell you that the word Nika symbolized one of the hardest and bloodiest rebellions that the Byzantine Empire knew? The Nika Riots were the most violent riots to occur in Constantinople until this year. Half the city was burned and destroyed, and 35,000 people were killed. They are still considered to be the most severe riots in the period of late antiquity. These are riots that claim the lives of thousands of men, more than many wars that existed in those days. This is one of the most difficult events in the history of the human empire, and it was all caused by a racing car. Yes, you heard that right. Thousands of people died because of chariot racing. So before we dive into the fire and smoke, let's start by understanding the background of the event. In those days, the citizens of the Byzantine Empire suffered from the heavy taxes and the reduction of the economy in the Byzantine Empire after the heavy debts left by the Iberian War, don't confuse with Iberian Spain, against the Persian Empire. At the time the most popular sport was chariot racing. What are the names of the teams, you ask? Well, the division was basic, according to colors, but if I respond to something like this on Instagram, I will get a ban. A division was made into 4 groups: blue, green, white, and red. There was a long-standing hatred between the blue and green factions. Emperor Justinianus and his wife Theodora were known fans of the blue team. Just a second, I need to pause the video to discuss the fact that people hated, literally loathed each other based on colors. Do you understand why this story is so dumb? But wait, it will get worse. But in the meantime, let's go back to our story. On Sunday, January 10th, 532, Eudaemon, the governor of Constantinople, ordered the execution of several criminals accused of murder. 2 of those sentenced to death, one from the blue faction and one from the opposing green faction, were sent to be hanged on the gallows. When they were hanged, the gallows broke, and the 2 fell to the floor alive. The audience that watched the play claimed that it was divine intervention and called for their pardon. If you ask me, there are advantages to being fat. Monks from the monastery of St. Conion managed to smuggle the 2 into St. Lawrence Abbey and protected them there. Eudaemon, being a certified hater, sent a military force to surround the place with the monks and the 2 locked inside. On Tuesday, January 13th, the chariot races were held at the city hippodrome. 24 chariot races were planned for that day, with the crowd in the stands divided according to the blue and green factions. From the beginning of the races until the 22nd race, the crowd called for Caesar to pardon the fleeing criminals. After not getting an answer from the emperor, the fans united and chanted, "Long live the blue and green." The united fans began rioting while chanting Nika, victory, and the emperor and his men fled to the palace, which was connected to the royal stand, and barricaded themselves inside. Put yourself in the emperor's shoes for a moment. How would you feel if you were the unifying factor between 2 groups of people who hate each other?
Oh no!
Well, if I were in the emperor's shoes, I would probably be a corrupt person living a life of pleasure, but that has nothing to do with the video. The rebels left the hippodrome and arrived in the evening at the army headquarters and the city prison, the Praetorium, and demanded the release of the fugitives imprisoned in the monastery. When they did not receive an answer, the rebels broke into the prison, burned the place, and killed the government officials there. The rebels continued rioting and began to burn large areas of the city: the Hagia Sophia Church, the baths of Zosiphos, the houses of the rich, and other public buildings in the emperor's court. In those days, several officials earned the intense hatred of the populace. Now, with the crowd inflamed by alcohol and a thirst for blood, they demanded the officials' heads. Among them were Eudaemon, city prefect, who ordered the pursuit and execution of fugitives, Trebonianus, a corrupt quaestor who accepted bribes for legal favors, and John the Cappadocian, efficient yet despised as court prefect. The rebels demanded their execution, but Emperor Justinian chose to dismiss them to calm the unrest. On the 5th day of the riots, the emperor ordered the expulsion of the 2 nephews of the previous emperor, Anastasius I. The nephews, Hypatius and Pompey, who served in senior positions in Justinian's administration, were expelled from the palace to their home, apparently due to the emperor's fear that they would join the rebels. But now, when the rebels heard about it, they came home and called for Hypatius to be crowned emperor in Justinian's place. The rebels took Hypatius to the Forum of Constantinople, dressed him in royal clothes, and placed a crown on his head. The rebels in Hyphatheus then returned to the Hippodrome and seated Hyphatheus on the throne in the Caesar's gallery. Think how it feels to wake up as the nephew of the exiled emperor and end the day as an emperor surrounded by football fans, chariots, angry and smelly. The emperor, at a loss, remembered that he was the emperor.
Wait a minute!
And at his disposal, the army of the empire, and ordered his two generals, Belisarius and Mundus, to lead their troops and eliminate the rebels fortified in the Hippodrome. Mundus led a force towards the southern entrance associated with the Greens, and Belisarius led his forces towards the northern entrance associated with the Blues. After encountering strong resistance from both entrances, Belisarius decided to try and infiltrate with a smaller force straight into the royal gallery, where Hypatius, the new emperor, was staying. Belisarius imprisoned Hypatius and Pompey and killed their supporters. In the meantime, the rest of the forces that surrounded the rebels from the north and south began to slaughter the masses of demonstrators inside the Hippodrome, resulting in the death of approximately 30,000 people. It is true that these are the fans of the green and blue teams, but the color that was most noticeable that day was red. Hypatius and Pompey were brought before Justinian and claimed that they had secretly worked on his behalf. They brought all the rebels to the Hippodrome to make it easier for Justinian to eliminate the riots. Procopius himself makes the claim that Hypatius may have been expelled from the palace at the beginning of the riots with the intention of turning him into a spy for the rebels, but Justinian turned to the two and told them that if they were indeed working in his service, they would have instructed the rebels to stop the riots even before that, thus preventing the burning of the city. The two were imprisoned and executed on Tuesday, January 19, 532. This ended the riots, and Emperor Justinian began to rebuild the destroyed city. And the fans? Well, they understood the danger of fanaticism and drunkenness, and therefore decided that a change should be made in the chariot race. And so they changed their colors to black and purple, and everyone lived happily ever after until the Ottomans arrived.